Hello students, I'm Dr. Himanshu Kantpal, Assistant Professor English, Government MS College for Women, Bikaner. Today we are going to study the essay on the pleasures of no longer being very young, written by G.K. Chesterton. Gilbert Keith Chesterton, born May 29, 1874, London, England, died June 14, 1936, Beaconsfield, Buckinghamshire, was an English critic and author of verse, essays, novels, and short stories, known also for his exuberant personality. Exuberant means full of energy and cheerfulness, and rotund figure. Rotund means large and plump. Chesterton holds an important and enduring place in English literature as a Catholic polemicist and the proponent of the social philosophy of distributism. He started his career as a reviewer of art books for the London Bookman. He wrote essays, history, biography, criticism, fiction, poetry, and drama. His volumes of essay include Tremendous Trifles, A Shilling for My Thoughts, All Things Considered. He gained the widest distinction, however, with his Father Brown mysteries, particularly his use of them to consider the darker aspects of human nature. In the essay on the pleasures of no longer being very young by Chesterton, we have the theme of youth, maturity, innocence, conflict, and happiness. It is taken from All His Grist that was published in 1931. That is the collection. The reader realizes after reading the essay that Chesterton may be exploring the differences between youth and maturity. This essay was written after the Great Economic Depression in the 1930s, when the industrial economies had completely collapsed and modern man had learned the lesson of being too proud of his knowledge. The title of the essay itself is an example of Chestertonian paradox, that is, a piece of truth, important but little realized, being sharply outlined through the trick of verbal inversion. Chesterton in this essay argues that people look at the advantages of old age in a sentimental way. He feels that the advantages of being in advanced years are generally not properly understood, but they are stated in a sentimental way. Their description of old age is likened to snowy beards of Santa Claus. Santa Claus or the Father Christmas, the legendary figure of Santa Claus, representative of the Christmas spirit, a fat, rosy old man with flowing white beard who brings Christmas presents for the Christmas season, and old men possessing the wisdom of Nestor. Nestor is the eldest and wisest of the Greek chieftains who besieged Troy. Chesterton argues that the old age is actually the time to be romantic and adventurous. Old people know that they are not aware of many things, but they are happy in their fool's paradise as they can go on bearing new things. So the writer feels that the advantages of being in advanced era are generally not properly understood. For example, he says that it is stated that old people are very wise. They have beautiful snowy beards like Father Christmas. The young people see no good in these. They fail to believe that what the old men say in full of wisdom, so they grow doubtful about the praise that is given to older people. The result is they fail to see the real advantages of maturity are not those which are generally urged even in praise of it. When they are truly urged, they sound like an almost comic contradiction. The real advantages of old age appear to be comic contradiction. People feel that many things seems to be growing younger as one becomes old. Young men think that traditions and customs are outdated and useless. But old people, with all their experience, realize that traditions are not outdated. They are practically useful, so they have continued to survive through centuries. The writer presents wordplay. Traditions are true and therefore alive. Indeed, a tradition is not even traditional except when it is alive. So, one of the most important advantages of advancing years that we begin to see significance in a large number of traditions, institutions, maxims and code of manners that seem in our first days to be dead. Young men regard traditions and customs as absurd and dead. Chesterton further argues that only old people know the real values of traditions and proverbs as they, through their advancing years, realize the truth hidden in the gems of traditions. The proverbs that have been handed down to us traditionally have great truth in them. They are true and practical. In old age, we begin to see the truth that is in them. He humorously refers to how he did not understand the proverb of dog in the manger until he owned a dog. Then he also gives the proverb, it is an ill wind that blows nobody good. Proverb meaning that there is something good even in that object which one considers to be absolutely bad. Chesterton says that proverbs are not simply important because they are proverbial. They are proverbs because they have practical values attached to them. Young people think them to be stiff and stale, thus fail to realize the wisdom of them. Proverbs and human history offer us practical wisdom, but people fail to understand that wisdom. The economic Here, Chesterton refers to the Great Economic Depression which gripped the Western world in the 20s and 30s of the present century. Chesterton's essay was written during the above period. Proverbs and the human history offers us practical wisdom, but people fail to understand that wisdom. The economic depression represents the failure of modern industrial world. It could have been avoided if people remembered the old lessons given by many proverbs. It is always said that the luck-tried money are all temporary. This has been proved by the downfall of emperors like Napoleon Bonaparte. Emperor of France was defeated at Waterloo and he spent the rest of his life in the island of St. Helena almost as a prisoner. Alexander the Great and the great Roman, but modern man does not learn anything from these examples. Chesterton says we had been told that the Roman Empire declined or that the Spanish Empire disintegrated, but no German really applied it to the German Empire and no Briton to the British Empire. The very repetition of these truths will sound like the old interminable repetition of the truism, and yet they are to me at this moment like amazing and startling discoveries, for I have lived to see the dead proverbs come alive. Chesterton regards that this truth can be understood only by the old people. In words which appear paradoxical, he says, "The thing was a dead maxim when we are alive with youth. It becomes a living maxim when we are nearer to death. Even as we are dying, the whole world is coming to life." For the writer witnessing the economic depression is to see the dead proverbs come alive. It is not the fault of young people that they must understand the importance of old things. For the young people, old things are on a different level of understanding. Since old people have the experience of life, they can better understand the real meaning of everything. Chesterton understands why young people don't discern the wisdom of old things as they consider them to be stiff and stale as the old dusty labels on objects from antiquity. Chesterton likens old age to second childhood that sees everything with new interest and realizes that life itself has never died. It is an it is an irony of life that even as we are dying, the whole world is coming alive. Another paradox is that it is not the young people who realize the new world. Young people cannot understand the newness of new things because they have never experienced the whole old things. Old people have the experience of the old things, so they can better understand the difference between the old and the new. The writer gives an interesting analogy. We cannot feel the rotation of the earth because we have never experienced a situation when the earth did not rotate. If the earth stops, its rotation starts moving in the opposite direction, then only we will understand how it feels when the earth rotates. So, it is true, though it looks strange and paradoxical, that it is not the young people who realize the new world. The moderns do not understand realize modernity. Perhaps it is because they have never known anything else. The old people do feel sharply and clearly the epoch which is beginning, for they were there before it began. Old people can only understand old things if someone says that these days people don't go to church, so the village church would be replaced with a chemical factory. The oldest villager would say that in his childhood even fewer people went to church. Similarly, young people say that modern world does not believe in supernatural, but earlier no educated villager believed in ghost, whereas a modern scientist like Sir Oliver Lodge, he was a famous British scientist. Late in his life, he became interested in parapsychology, spirits, and other occult matters. Whereas a modern scientist like Sir Oliver Lodge conducts richer research in parapsychology and paranormal activities. So, the writer believes that certain changes occur in the world which the young people are incapable to understand. It is only when we grow older that we are able to see them. We are unable to realize these changes when we are young. This change of perspective is like something dead coming to life. In a seemingly contradictory remark, we are led to see the great truth of human psychology and understanding. In old age, we are able to see things which we fail to see in youth. This is one of the most important advantages of old age. It is sad to note that the older people realize this quite late in their life. It is this calm, serene, and peaceful view of life which makes old age valuable to us. Chesterton concludes the essay with one very interesting observation. He remembers that young people scoffed at the idea of existence of the ghost and spirits. The person emphatically denied the possibility of the village ghost. Educated people firmly believed that dead do not return in the world of sense. But now uh, we now find scientists beginning to believe in spiritualism with all seriousness, and uh, he gives the example of Sir Oliver Lodge. Chesterton, in his paradoxical way, concludes the essay thus: the very repetition of these truths will sound like the old interminable repetition of the truisms, and yet they are to me at this moment like amazing and startling discoveries, for I have lived to see the dead proverbs come alive. The scholarly tone of Chesterton is never amiss, since he proves his arguments with classical, biblical, historical, and literary allusions. In the essay, he gives us many proverbs also, and historical allusions. He talks about Napoleon Bonaparte, and he talks about the Battle of Marengo. Then he talks about Charles V, Charles I, and he gives the reference to the Latin proverb that is sic transit gloria mundi, that is, thus passes away earthly glory, and many more. The spin on the proverbs used in the essay, like dog in the mango, it is an ill wind that blows nobody good, etc. He presents a hues in the essay are calculated to have the desired effect and command the attention of his reader. This essay discusses the eternal conflict between the old and the new from a realistic and practical point of view. He presents a practical advantages of getting old. The tone is scholarly as the writer proves his arguments with classical, biblical, and historical allusions. He point out many funny details of common life. Paradox and word play bring gentle humor to the essay. Finally, this essay can be understood as a defense of the gravity and validity of the old. Chesterton's writing is characterized as being very witty and clever and gained the name of Prince of Paradox. Paradox here means a statement containing an apparent contradiction that is earned with the quotes such as fallacies do not cease to be fallacies because they become fashions, and it is not bigotry to be certain we are right, but it is bigotry to be unable to imagine how we might possibly have gone wrong. He was in fact one of the last masters of the satirical form of writing. Chesterton's prose in its best moment is soaring and transcendent. Most authors use prose to paint picture or explain an idea, yet often is only capable of conjuring in the mind of the reader something that is familiar to them, something commonplace. Yet the writing of Chesterton takes one to another level. His prose lifts one from the ground of his own experience and opens up new horizons, taking us to places we only dream of, with only the use of mere words. No less remarkable is the fact that he does all this in English, a notoriously prosaic language. Yet in the tradition of the best masters, Chesterton took the English language and pushed it to its limits, creating some of the most memorable literature the language had ever been used. The language had ever been used to write. Chesterton's style shows the influences of Kipling, Belloc, and Stevenson in different fields and varying degrees, yet he is his own self everywhere. In poetry, he has rolling rhythms, unions of gravity and levity, and journalistic gusto. And prose, Chesterton's style has wit, humor, vitality, insight, imagination, and power of giving cosmic importance to trifles. But at the same times, at some places, he suffers from blunted epigrams, vagueness, and most of all his elaborate stillness. But his works reveal an intellectual stability and boundless energy that are really found together. Some of the striking characteristics of Chesterton as an essayist are his spirited defense of his own point of view, tending to didacticism, but welcome flashes of bright humor here and there, his love of balance, antithesis and paradox, his wide reading and well-stocked memory, exactitude of expression, and above all, a mental adroitness which emanates from his strong self-confidence. Chesterton is always very sure of himself. For instance, even though he is often digressive, he never allows the contours of his essay to get distended or blurred. This is all about the essay on the pleasures of no longer being young. Thank you.